Welcome back. All right, news of the day video for all you fine people on the internet for your Wednesday, September the 27th. Starting with, from yesterday, Cory Schneider retires. He announced his retirement yesterday from the National Hockey League. I will be doing a career video either today or tomorrow. I haven't decided yet on whether or not I'm going to be recapping a hockey game tonight. I may take a break from that and do it again tomorrow. But either way, there will be a video going up of Cory Schneider's career. It's an interesting one. He started out as the heir apparent to the net in Vancouver. Then he ends up in New Jersey, where he takes over from a guy named Marty Brodeur. And he had a lot of good years. He was very good. And then injuries just took its toll. And so, yeah, Schneider retires with probably fewer games played and fewer wins than he would have liked in his career, but still a solid career nonetheless. Joel Edmundson is out 4 to 6 weeks for the Washington Capitals. It's a hand injury that's required surgery. So he's had that surgery, and now he'll take 4 to 6 weeks to recover. For the Washington Capitals, of course, they need all hands on deck. They're also hopeful that Backstrom's hip issues will not flare up this year. As I've mentioned before, when you have hip resurfacing surgery, your career is normally a lot shorter afterwards than it otherwise might have been. So we'll see how things go for the Washington Capitals this season. Good news for Flames fans, thus the Flames jersey, combined with some bad news for Flames fans, thus the Flames jersey. The Flames are progressing towards an extension with Michael Backlund. So the rumor has always been Backlund would probably get the C if he's staying. And so it's likely that if they sign him, I would think then that he gets named team captain. So we'll see what that looks like. And then, of course, they'll circle back with other pending unrestricted free agents like Lindholm and Hanifin. And I think they're going to try to keep as many people around as they can. But if Backlund re-signs, that's good, because I know at the end of last season, Backlund was included in the list of players who didn't sound like he wanted to stick around in Calgary and kind of, not feeling the idea of sticking around for a long time. So if that feeling of his has changed, and if a new GM and a new coach has made him feel like, I want to stay here, that might bode well for other pending unrestricted free agents in Calgary too. Now, for the bad news, Pelletier, who was being looked at as a guy who could have a very good rookie season for Calgary, that's been sidelined in that he's had shoulder surgery, or he's had shoulder surgery and he's out indefinitely. So we'll see how long he's out, but when it's indefinitely, it's months. We're looking at months, and this is a Calgary team that now is going to be looking to others. Now, of course, Coronado is a rookie that's generated a lot of excitement and interest, so Coronado now would slide into, I would think, that spot, or somebody else slides into that spot. We'll see how their lineup looks this year. Calgary I'm going to be interested in, because they do want to bounce back and get into the playoffs, right? Speaking of, the Ottawa Senators want to get in the playoffs. They're going to need a healthy Josh Norris to do so. He's likely to play in a couple of preseason games. Now, what's interesting is that Bruce Garriock had reported that he wasn't likely to see contact, and yet he's in a regular jersey at practice today. So with Norris, he may be closer than what we think, and they're saying he'll get in a couple of preseason games as well. Honestly, the better shape that Norris is in come opening day of the regular season, the better. And so if that means, taking it gradually and just giving them those games at the end of the preseason, then I think that's the right move to make. If the Senators were without Norris for this season, like last season, I think it might be tougher for them, even though they've added Tarasenko and Kubalik came in the deal for DeBrincat. So some of the PTOs are starting to drop by the wayside. The Arizona Coyotes releasing 4, including Ulevi and Ryan Dzingel. So only Ulevi, Ryan Dzingel do not make the Arizona roster. Arizona, of course, signed a lot of PTOs. I still think that's because they knew they were taking their A team down to Australia. There were split squad games. They had to have a ton of players, so you sign a ton of PTOs, knowing that a lot of these players you're bringing in aren't going to sign. Now, what this means is that for guys like Ulevi, Dzingel, as just for instance, as other teams now could jump in and say, hey, you can come over and play with us, this kind of thing. Cease has been released from his PTO by Winnipeg. Winnipeg released a couple, but Cease is the one that I am familiar with. And yeah, Cease, a depth forward for the Winnipeg Jets at points in time, but replaceable, yes. And so that's the trick when you're bottom 6 in the NHL. you do have a role that can be readily replaced a lot of the time. So you have to basically outperform a lot of players that are playing a similar style to yours. So the Edmundson Oilers are not celebrating the mercy rule at all against the Vancouver Canucks tonight. It looks like we're going to have McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins, Skinner starting. So, as a Vancouver fan, I'm tempted to watch this because after the 10-0 drubbing the Canucks took from Calgary, seeing that lineup for the Oilers, I'm like, geez, could it happen again? Maybe. We'll see what the Canucks lineup looks like. But yeah, it looks like the Oilers are going to be playing their A lineup. So if the Canucks answer with their A lineup, it shouldn't be 10-0. Shouldn't be, but we'll see what happens. After 40 plus years of watching the Canucks and being a Canucks fan, if you can't laugh at this, man, it's got to be miserable. Anyways, there are 3 players on tryouts that are in the lineup for the Carolina Hurricanes tonight, according to their lineup card. Kiefer Bellows, Brendan Perlini, Zach Aston Reese. Of the 3, I think Aston Reese probably the most likely to get a job. He's a solid bottom 6 forward. Perlini and Bellows may end up in the AHL, so we'll see what happens there. And Ryan Suzuki's in the lineup too. I know Ryan Suzuki, brother of Nick. There are some who are a big fan of his defensive game. I will agree there. What I saw of Suzuki in a preseason game, I think it was last year. Yeah, his name's Suzuki. He's a smart defensive forward. So we'll see whether or not he ends up getting himself a job with the Carolina Hurricanes this year. But there's a lot of competition in Carolina Hurricanes camp. So I wanted to talk about this for a little bit at the end of this video. And I saved this stuff for the end just because people are going to probably just click away. But why are we still debating EA Sports rating of players? We know there's certain things that are true. They will always overrate players who are in their mid-30s and are on the decline. They will always rate them similar to what they were before. And I think it's really they don't want to rate that decline in right away. So you don't, like, for instance, Patrick Kane, I think, is still an 89. So they're not going to make him an 83 or an 84, which is probably more realistic because it would be probably perceived as hate by a lot of people, even though at this point in time, with the injuries Kane's gone through and everything, yeah, he's probably not going to be the same Patrick Kane. And then they always underrate players coming into the league. There's always that underrating of players coming into the league. And I used to get frustrated because I would load up the game and look at the ratings and go, well, these are wrong. So I would go through and manually update all of them. When the channel was starting out, I actually did a live stream where I was updating all of the rosters manually. And what's frustrating is you update all the rosters manually, you get everybody's ratings set, and then you download a roster update, and you got to do it kind of all over again. So I do find it odd. The other thing I would throw out there is that in the game itself, and this has been true of every version that I've played. Now, if this has changed over the last year, because I didn't play last year's game, then it's changed. But ratings didn't really matter when you're playing the game. So, for instance, there were times where I might be controlling a player who's a 79, but he's a good skater, he's got a good shot. That's fine. I can still get goals with this player. He's good at passing. He's good for setting up plays. So the fact that his overall rating is a 79 never negatively impacted my experience playing the game. And there were other players that were very highly rated, but they were really physical and they weren't great skaters and their passing kind of sucked. So it was like, okay, this guy might be an 88, this guy might be a 79, but I like the guy who's a 79 better. And so while people look at the overall rating and this is wrong, this guy should be higher, this guy should be lower, the parts of the player's profile that affect what their rating is has always been kind of a head scratcher for me. There are certain things that will influence a player's rating that I'm like, I don't think that necessarily should. And things that don't influence a player's rating as much as I think it should either. So I find it odd that we're still having this debate about something that I think is kind of flawed overall. I think instead of looking at the overall number, look at who the most accurate shooters are. Look at the fastest skaters. Look at the individual attributes of the players, rather than just say, well, this guy's an 81 overall, that guy's an 85, so clearly the 85 is better than the 81. Not always. And I say that if you're playing it. Now, if you're simulating it, yeah, probably wouldn't matter that you can score if you're manually playing the game with a guy who's a 79. The game will just probably bury him. But it is interesting that we're still debating this all these years later. Yes, veterans are overrated. Yes, rookies come in and they're undervalued. And then usually by a month or two into the season, they do a roster update that makes things a little more realistic, that makes it so it's a little bit more playable. But then you're 2 months into the season. So the odd part to me is that at the time where the game feels like it's got all the players right and everybody's in all the right spots, and then the season's over halfway done. So the popularity, the demand for the game has dropped way off. It's just one of those things. And as I've mentioned before, I still think releasing a brand new game every year, I think that's a version of price gouging. I do. I don't think you need a brand new game every year. I think that's unfair to developers. I think it's just, it feels to me like it's an outdated idea that at some point in time you're going to have a league that says, you know what, we're just going to build a core game and then we'll do roster updates and we can charge people for certain updates. Similar to, and I've mentioned this before, what you have with Grand Theft Auto, and there's other games that are like that. But just keep the core game the same and add to it. Sims did that for years, where you had the core game, and then you would want to add all the other stuff. I don't see any reason why EA couldn't do the same thing and give their developers a break. And then you have that core game that you can just go in and tinker with, rather than, okay, now we're building a new game again. It feels unrealistic that you're going to get a really good game that's not full of bugs if it's been in development for a very short period of time. But anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.